My son's hand on my back was a question my husband had stopped asking 20 years ago. It wasn't a carnal question, not yet. It was a question of presence, of temperature, of existence. Are you there? Are you warm? Are you real? It was a question I had forgotten how to answer. The air in the kitchen hung thick and silent, smelling of brewing coffee and the sharp, clean scent of the lemons I'd just sliced. It was a sterile, beautiful silence, one I curated every morning. Outside, the world was a blur of hazy late summer green through the floor-to-ceiling windows Richard had been so proud of. They were meant to bring the outside in, but all they really did was show me a world I was no longer a part of. My hands, submerged in a sink of hot soapy water, were meticulously washing a porcelain mug that was already spotless. It was a ritual. The heat, the scent of the soap, the smooth, unblemished surface of the ceramic. It was a small sphere of control in a life that had spun out into a vast, quiet emptiness. My life had become a museum of beautiful, untouched things. I was the curator, the janitor, and the loneliest visitor. Richard had left an hour ago. His departure was not an event. It was an erasure. It began with the staccato tapping of his thumbs on his phone during breakfast, creating a digital wall between us. I had tried to breach it. The hydrangeas are turning that lovely shade of blue again, I'd said, my voice sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet room. Oh, honey, did you see the pre-market report on Etheria Tech? It's going to fly. He hadn't looked up. The blue he was interested in was the cool, promising glow of his screen. I didn't respond. The silence that followed was my answer to everything now. His kiss, when it came, was a dry, papery brush against my cheek, an action performed out of habit, devoid of heat or intent. Then came the familiar, confident click of his briefcase latch, the soft thud of the garage door, and the subsequent return of the profound silence which settled back over the house like a shroud. I rinsed the mug for the 5th time and placed it on a linen drying mat. Before Richard, before this house, my hands were not for cleaning. They were for creating. They used to be stained with charcoal and cobalt blue paint, smelling of turpentine and linseed oil. I had a studio once, a small chaotic room filled with light and possibility. My canvases were my voice. Now my hands were pristine, my nails perfectly manicured. My voice was the hum of the dishwasher and the whisper of a dust rag on polished wood. The art of my life had become the art of maintenance. The soft padding of bare feet on the cool slate floor broke my trance. Morning. Liam's voice was a low, warm hum that filled the space Richards had just vacated. He was leaning against the door frame, a tall, sleepy figure backlit by the morning sun. He was home from his first year of college, and the boy who had left 9 months ago had been replaced by this near stranger who was broader in the shoulders and carried himself with a new, quiet confidence. "I thought you were sleeping in," I said, turning to face him, a genuine smile surprising my own lips. He ambled over to the coffee machine, his movements fluid and easy. The smell of coffee is a scientifically proven alarm clock. He poured himself a mug, the same one I had just washed, and leaned against the counter beside me. "What's on the agenda for today? World domination? Or just reorganizing the spice rack again?" His teasing was gentle, but it held a sharp glint of observation. He saw my routines, my carefully constructed patterns of distraction. He saw me. Very funny. "Today's agenda is a birthday trip to the beach." "Your birthday trip, in case you'd forgotten," I said, nudging him with my elbow. He was turning 19. Another year, another step further away from me and closer to a life of his own. As if I could forget. The annual pilgrimage to get sand in our sandwiches. He took a sip of coffee. His eyes, a darker, more thoughtful version of my own, studied my face over the rim of the mug. "You look tired, Mom." It was a simple statement of fact, yet it landed with the force of a confession. Richard would have said the same words, but they would have been an accusation, a note of concern about appearances before a dinner party. From Liam, it was an expression of genuine care. It made my throat tighten. "Just a long night," I lied, turning back to the sink to busy my hands again. "Was Dad being an ass before he left?" he asked, his voice losing its playful edge. "Liam, don't talk about your father that way." The reprimand was automatic Pavlovian. "Why not? It's true." He wasn't being aggressive. He was just stating a truth as plainly as if he were commenting on the weather. "I saw the way he was ignoring you at breakfast. It's like you're a ghost to him unless he needs his suit pressed." The raw honesty of it stunned me. I had spent years meticulously papering over the cracks in our family, pretending the foundation wasn't crumbling. And here he was, tearing the wallpaper down with a few casual sentences. I didn't know what to say, so I just shook my head, my hands gripping the edge of the sink. He didn't press the issue. He simply reached over and placed his hand on my shoulder, a gesture of solidarity that felt more supportive than anything I had felt from my husband in years. "Well, for what it's worth," he said softly, "I see you." The beach was a riot of noise and color, a chaotic tapestry woven from the threads of 1,000 different lives. Liam staked our claim near the dunes, driving the umbrella pole deep into the sand with strong, efficient thrusts. I laid out the blankets, my movements slow and deliberate, a stark contrast to the joyful energy surging around me. My artistic eye, long dormant, couldn't help but deconstruct the scene. The cadmium yellow of a child's pail, the cerulean blue of the endless sky, the violent, joyful splash of white as a wave broke against the shore. It was a beautiful painting, but I was on the outside of the frame looking in. We fell into an easy, familiar rhythm. We tossed a frisbee, my throws clumsy and his catches acrobatic. We waded into the bracingly cold water, the shock of it making me gasp and laugh, a sound that felt rusty in my throat. We lay on the blankets, the sun, a heavy, warm blanket on our skin, and talked about his classes. His friend's a girl named Maya. He was trying not to like too much. It was easy. It was normal. And it was a more profound intimacy than I had shared with my own husband in a decade. "I'm burning," I murmured after a while, my eyes closed against the glare. "I think I need sunscreen." "Want me to get your back?" he offered, his voice lazy with the sun. A knot of something apprehension maybe tightened in my stomach, but I pushed it down. It was a normal request. A mother and a son. "Would you? I can never reach the middle." I sat up, turning my back to him, and untied the top strings of my swimsuit, holding the fabric against my chest. The air, suddenly cool on my exposed skin, made me shiver. I heard the pop of the sunscreen bottle cap, the slick sound of lotion being squeezed into a palm. I braced myself for the cold, perfunctory application. It never came. His touch when it began was shockingly gentle. His fingers, cool from the lotion, landed on my shoulders like a sigh. He didn't just slather or rub. He applied the lotion with slow, deliberate strokes, his palms molding to the curves of my shoulder blades, his thumbs pressing gently into the tense muscles along my spine. It was a cartographer's touch mapping a forgotten country. Each stroke was a question. "Are you there?" My breath caught. I was acutely aware of the warmth of his hand against the coolness of my skin. I could feel the slight roughness of a callus on his palm, a testament to the guitar he'd been learning to play. It was an innocent touch. It was a practical touch. I repeated the words in my head like a mantra, trying to drown out the sudden roaring pulse in my ears. But the mantra was failing, because his touch felt like recognition. He was tracing the lines of my back as a painter might trace a landscape with a focused, reverent attention. Down my spine, over the sharp jut of my shoulder blades, to the sensitive skin just at the edge of the fabric I clutched to my chest. My entire body went rigid. This was no longer about preventing a sunburn. A line was being approached, a silent, invisible boundary shimmering in the hot, salt-laced air between us. "Thanks." I managed to choke out the word, feeling thick and clumsy in my mouth. That's good." His hands stilled. For a long, silent moment, they simply rested there, a warm, heavy weight in the small of my back. A brand. He was so close I could feel the heat radiating from his body. Then slowly he pulled away. I didn't dare to turn around. I quickly retied my swimsuit, my fingers fumbling with the strings, feeling clumsy and exposed. The easy atmosphere was gone, replaced by a delicate, shimmering tension. We ate our sandwiches in a new kind of silence, one that was no longer comfortable but fraught with unspoken words. The jarring ring of a cell phone shattered the tension. It was Richard. He wasn't supposed to be there, but there he was, striding across the sand toward us, his work trousers rolled up to his calves, his polished dress shoes looking absurd against the natural landscape. He was barking orders into his phone. "No, absolutely not. We liquidate the position before the afternoon bell. I don't care what Henderson thinks, just do it." He clicked off the phone and gestured toward us with it. "Thought I'd surprise you." The meeting ended early. He didn't sound happy about it. He sounded inconvenienced. He kissed the air near my cheek and gave Liam a rough pat on the shoulder. "Getting some sun, I see. Don't want you heading back to school looking like a ghost." He sat on the edge of the blanket, immediately pulled out his phone again, and his thumb began its relentless hypnotic dance. He had brought his world with him, a world of stock prices and leveraged positions, and it had completely eclipsed ours. I looked at Liam. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on his father with a look of cold, quiet fury. He had seen the whole thing, the fragile peace we had found, and the effortless way Richard had just bulldozed through it. The question his hand had asked on my back, "Are you real?" had just been answered by my husband's arrival. To Richard, I wasn't. We left soon after. The drive home was a tomb of silence. In the days that followed, the memory of that touch on the beach became a secret I kept from myself. I buried it under piles of laundry, drowned it in the scent of bleach, and scrubbed it away from the kitchen counters. But it was always there, a phantom heat on my skin. One afternoon, I was in the spare room sorting through old boxes, a mindless task to keep my hands and head occupied. Liam appeared in the doorway. He was holding one of my old sketchbooks, its worn canvas cover gray with dust. I hadn't seen it in 15 years. "I found this in the back of the linen closet," he said, his voice soft. He opened it and I saw frantic, passionate sketches of landscapes, of faces, of hands. They were full of a life and energy that felt like they belonged to another woman. "These are really good, Mom." "Why did you stop?" The question was a physical blow. I sank down onto the edge of the guest bed, the dust motes dancing in the afternoon light. I don't know," I whispered, but it was a lie. I did know. It had happened slowly. A canvas put away to make room for a crib. A class missed because of a parent-teacher conference. A studio packed up and converted into a home office for Richard. My art, my soul had been displaced piece by piece until there was nothing left. Life got in the way, I guess. "That's bullshit," he said, his voice laced with a gentle frustration. He sat down beside me, the old mattress groaning under our combined weight. He turned the pages of the sketchbook, his fingers tracing the charcoal lines. "He should have never let you stop. He should have built you a studio instead of a 3-car garage." Tears pricked my eyes, not of self-pity, but of gratitude. In that moment, he wasn't my son. He was my witness. He was the only person in the world who was mourning the loss of the woman I used to be. He saw the ghost of the artist who still lived inside me. The next day, Richard left for a 2-day conference in Chicago. The house exhaled in his absence. I found myself suggesting the beach again, the words leaving my mouth before I had a chance to question them. It wasn't about the sun or the sand this time. It was about chasing the ghost Liam had shown me, the ghost of myself. We found our usual spot. The air was different this time, thick with the weight of yesterday's conversation. We didn't play frisbee. We just sat the silence between us, filled with a profound, aching understanding. Eventually, inevitably, I reached for the sunscreen. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. I turned my back to him, untying the strings of my suit, my movement slow, deliberate. It was a conscious act, a surrender. I waited. His touch when it came was as gentle as before, but it held a new weight, a new meaning. His hands moved over my skin, not just with care, but with a kind of anger, a tender fury. It was a protest against the years of my invisibility, a rebellion against the man who should have been the one touching me with such reverence. My eyes drifted shut. This time I didn't fight it. I let the sensation wash over me, a reawakening of nerve endings that had slept for 2 decades. He was reminding my skin that it was alive. "Nora," he whispered, his voice thick and close to my ear. He'd never called me by my first name before. I turned my head slightly, my cheek brushing against the warm, sun-kissed skin of his shoulder. His face was just inches from mine, his eyes dark with a complex storm of emotions I couldn't begin to name. Pity, anger, and something else, something terrifyingly deep. "He should have seen you," he breathed, his gaze unwavering. All this time he should have been seeing this, and then his lips met mine. It was a kiss of impossible gentleness, a kiss of profound and tragic sorrow. It wasn't about passion. It was about validation. It was his desperate, clumsy attempt to give me back the piece of my soul my husband had let gather dust in the attic of our marriage. I didn't kiss him back so much as I simply received it. My body limp, my mind a swirling vortex of shame and a fierce, heartbreaking gratitude. It was the most destructive and the most compassionate thing anyone had ever done for me. When he pulled away, the world came rushing back in loud and judgmental. His face was pale, his eyes wide with the enormity of what he'd just done. I'm sorry, Mom. I shouldn't have." I raised a trembling hand and laid my fingers against his lips, silencing him. "Don't be," I whispered. The drive home was silent, but it was a living silence now, pulsing with the weight of our shared transgression. When Liam left for college 2 days later, our hug at the door was brief, formal, the hug of 2 people who had shared a secret too heavy to carry. I watched him drive away, taking the last spark of life in this house with him. That night I stood in the center of my perfect silent home. It was a beautiful prison, and the kiss had been the key that unlocked the door. But walking out wasn't enough. Leaving Richard wasn't the answer. The problem wasn't just the cage, it was the woman who had forgotten she had wings. We all follow stories. We subscribe to channels and timelines, watching other people live their lives, hoping to feel a spark of something real. But a story is not something you just watch. It's something you must have the courage to write for yourself, even if you don't know the ending. I went up to the attic. In the back corner, under a yellow drop cloth, was my old easel, my box of paints, my canvases. They were coated in a thick layer of dust, the ghosts of a life I'd abandoned. I carried them downstairs, my movements sure and strong. I set up the easel in the guest room, the room with the best morning light. I cleaned the brushes, their familiar weight a comfort in my hand. I squeezed a dollop of cerulean blue onto a clean palette. The color was so vibrant, so alive, it almost hurt to look at it. I stood before the blank white canvas, a vast expanse of terrifying, exhilarating possibility. I didn't know what I was going to paint. I only knew that my hands, for the first time in 20 years, were finally ready to tell the truth. If you believe in the power of starting over and telling your own story, subscribe to our channel for more tales of transformation and the courage it takes to face a blank canvas.